Chairman, and I will note the fact that we don't have complete attendance on the Democratic side, but I think we're in better shape than the other side at this moment. And I would like to encourage your Republican colleagues to attend the session at the time called. I think it's in the best interest of the committee's activities. If you want us to hold back and not show up until 10 o'clock, we can do that. But I'd rather see us have a meeting time and all adhere to it on both sides of the aisle. This past weekend, President Trump and Secretary of Defense Hegseth sent the National Guard to Los Angeles. What was the president's reasoning for sending in the National Guard without a request from the state's governor for the first time since 1965, when President Johnson did so to protect civil rights demonstrators from state action against them in one state? President Trump falsely claims that Los Angeles is being, quote, invaded and occupied by, quote, violent insurrectionist mobs. Make it clear, as I always have, violence is unacceptable. Vandalism, unacceptable. You can exercise your constitutional rights, but not in the name of violence and vandalism, period. FBI Director Kash Patel echoed the language of the president, posting on Twitter, and I quote, hit a cop, you're going to jail. Doesn't matter where you came from, how you got here, or what movement speaks to you. Kash Patel, FBI. Both President Trump and Director Patel seem to have forgotten January 6, 2021, when a violent mob ransacked the Capitol complex in an actual attempted insurrection that led to the deaths of 5 police officers and injuries to more than 140 others. Kash Patel called these violent January 6 rioters, quote, political prisoners, and he produced the so-called January 6 prison choir, which sang songs and included at least 6 rioters who violently assaulted police officers. On President Trump's very first day in office, he issued a blanket pardon for January 6 rioters, including 169 who violently assaulted law enforcement officers. The Trump administration's support of these violent insurrectionists who hit cops continues to this day. After his disgraceful tenure as interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Ed Martin now is the pardon attorney for the Department of Justice. As the first political appointee to ever hold this position, Mr. Martin is personally advocating for the complete pardon of the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and others who were convicted of seditious conspiracy for their role in planning and inciting the January 6th insurrection. 11 of these individuals who have already received sentence commutations from President Trump are now seeking pardons despite showing no remorse for what happened on January 6th. And Mr. Martin has fast-tracked them all for pardon consideration, with no justification beyond his well-known support for January 6 rioters. Long-standing DOJ guidelines for pardon petitions require, quote, a petitioner should be genuinely desirous of forgiveness rather than vindication. Listen to what Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, said after his sentence was commuted by President Trump. Quote, the people who did this, they need to feel the heat. They need to be put behind bars and they need to be prosecuted. Success is going to be retribution. The head of the Proud Boys about the prosecutors at the Department of Justice. Does that sound like someone who desires forgiveness rather than vindication? Of course not. But Ed Martin reportedly wants President Trump to pardon Enrique Tarrio. For his part, Tarrio reports that last month he had a, quote, great conversation, close quote, with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Tarrio said, and I want to quote him, Trump called me and my mom over while we were at dinner and said he was sorry for what Joe Biden did to all the J6ers and said he was working on making things right. I thanked him for giving me my life back. He replied with, I love you guys. DOJ guidelines also provide that, quote, in general, a pardon is granted on the petitioner's good conduct for a substantial period of time after conviction and service of sentence. But at least 12 insurrectionists pardoned by President Trump have already been sentenced and charged with additional serious crimes since January 6. It appears Director Patel's claim that if you, quote, hit a cop, you're going to jail, only applies to people who President Trump doesn't agree with politically. I urge my Republican colleagues to join Democrats in condemning the ongoing effort to whitewash what happened on January 6.
Well, Senator Durbin, he's left me in charge.
This is a scary moment.
Very scary.